Police officer slapped a royal guard. Entire platoon swarmed in under 10 seconds. Flags of red, gold, and royal blue fluttered gently in the breeze, their colors reflecting off the polished marble floors that stretched endlessly in every direction. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and the crisp scent of polished stone, a sign that the palace staff had been up since dawn, preparing for the day's high-profile royal ceremony. Soldiers in perfectly pressed uniforms lined the pathways, their boots clicking sharply against the marble in synchronized rhythm. Each soldier's posture was perfect, every gesture controlled and precise. They were not just soldiers. They were the embodiment of discipline, trained to respond in a moment's notice to any threat to the royal family. Among the soldiers, the most respected figure was Captain Victor, a man known for his unwavering discipline and calm demeanor. His face was stern but fair, etched with years of experience in protecting the royal family. Even when surrounded by the grandeur of the palace, Victor's presence alone commanded respect. His eyes were constantly scanning the area, noting every detail, every movement. Nothing escaped his notice, and those who worked alongside him learned quickly that any lapse in focus could have serious consequences. Victor was not just a soldier. He was the heart of the royal platoon, the man who set the standard that everyone else followed. Officer Rajan, on the other hand, belonged to the city police force, a team responsible for maintaining order beyond the palace gates. Rajan was a tall man with broad shoulders and a confident stride, though today, his confidence felt shaky. He had been assigned to the palace that morning for crowd control during the royal ceremony, a task he had done countless times before. Normally, such assignments were routine, a series of checkpoints and calm interactions with visitors. But today, something felt different. Perhaps it was the sheer scale of the ceremony or the presence of the royal family, but Rajan felt a tension in the air he could not shake off. As he moved through the courtyard, checking that civilians stayed within designated areas and that no one crossed the barriers, Rajan's eyes inadvertently met those of Captain Victor. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Victor's gaze was sharp, almost piercing, and Rajan immediately felt the weight of judgment. He knew the captain's reputation. Stories of his strict discipline and swift action were whispered in police stations and barracks alike. Even though Rajan was a seasoned officer, he felt a pang of nervousness, a flicker of unease that made his palms sweat slightly. The courtyard was alive with movement. Children clutched their parents' hands, their wide eyes filled with wonder as they watched the soldiers perform their ceremonial drills. Photographers jostled for the best angles, cameras flashing to capture the perfect moment. Palace staff scurried about, ensuring everything was in its place, from the arrangement of flowers to the alignment of ceremonial flags. Rajan, focused on keeping the crowd orderly, didn't notice that he had stepped a little too close to the royal guards. It happened in a flash. As Rajan adjusted the rope barriers to keep a group of visitors at a safe distance, he accidentally brushed past Captain Victor. The captain's hand moved instinctively, stopping the slight intrusion with a gentle but firm touch on Rajan's shoulder. "Mind where you're going, officer," Victor said calmly, though there was a sharpness in his tone that left no room for argument. Rajan, already feeling tense, misread the gesture. His nerves flared, and instead of responding politely, he reacted impulsively. Without thinking, Rajan's hand shot out, and in a moment of rash anger, he slapped Captain Victor across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the marble courtyard, startling everyone nearby. Civilians froze, some covering their mouths in shock. Soldiers halted mid-step, their training momentarily interrupted by the audacity of the act. Victor's face remained composed, but his eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in the recognition of a blatant breach of protocol. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stand still. The gentle flutter of the flags, the faint rustle of the courtyard trees, even the distant clatter of boots, all of it faded into silence. People exchanged confused and fearful glances. How could a police officer, tasked with maintaining order, commit such a reckless act in front of the entire royal platoon? The audacity was almost unbelievable. Rajan immediately felt a surge of regret and fear. He had acted on impulse, letting frustration and nerves dictate his actions. The enormity of the mistake hit him like a wave. He opened his mouth to apologize, to explain that it was an accident, but words felt meaningless in that charged atmosphere. Victor's gaze locked onto him, calm and unyielding, like a stone wall that could not be moved. The contrast between Rajan's frantic energy and Victor's composed presence was stark, highlighting the seriousness of the situation. The soldiers around Victor did not need any instructions. They were trained to respond without hesitation, to act as one unit in the face of any threat to the royal family or their commanding officer. Within seconds, they moved with precision that was almost mechanical. Boots clicked against the marble, echoing like a drumbeat that signaled the readiness of a finely tuned machine. Rajan turned slightly, and to his horror, he saw the platoon forming a protective perimeter around Victor, each soldier taking their position with practiced efficiency. Civilians instinctively stepped back, sensing the tension that had gripped the courtyard. Some whispered in fear, unsure of what would happen next. Photographers froze, their cameras still raised, capturing the moment that would surely make headlines. The scene was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Rajan, who had always considered himself a capable officer, felt completely exposed. The reality of confronting trained soldiers in perfect formation was far different from any scenario he had imagined. For Victor, the slap was not just a personal affront. It was a disruption of order, a challenge to the discipline that defined the royal platoon. He did not flinch or retaliate physically. Instead, he took a step forward, his posture unchanged, radiating authority. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm but carried a weight that made Rajan instinctively lower his gaze. "This is unacceptable," Victor said, each word deliberate and measured. "Every action has consequences, officer. You must understand that here, discipline is not optional." Rajan's heart pounded in his chest. The fear was not of physical harm, though the platoon's readiness was intimidating, but of the social and professional consequences of his impulsive act. He realized that one moment of anger had the potential to unravel everything he had built in his career. The crowd sensed it too, a collective holding of breath as the tension lingered like a thick fog over the courtyard. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Every second felt heavier than the last. Rajan's mind raced, replaying the slap over and over, analyzing what had gone wrong. He had not intended to challenge authority or provoke a confrontation, yet here he was, at the center of a situation that could escalate in an instant. Victor's calm demeanor, combined with the platoon's unwavering readiness, left no room for negotiation, no room for error. The psychological weight of facing disciplined soldiers trained for rapid, coordinated action pressed down on Rajan like an invisible force. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was only a few seconds, Rajan forced himself to take a deep breath. He raised his hands slightly, a gesture of submission and acknowledgement of the mistake. His voice trembled as he spoke, trying to regain control of the situation. "Captain Victor, I didn't mean to." But before he could finish, the platoon's movements made it clear that words alone would not resolve the matter. They had already assessed the threat, encircled the officer, and prepared to act if necessary. The courtyard, once filled with the light chatter of visitors and the soft footsteps of palace staff, was now silent except for the synchronized clicks of boots and the faint rustle of uniforms. The presence of the royal platoon, poised and disciplined, was a stark reminder of the consequences of a single impulsive action. Rajan's mind flashed with memories of training exercises and previous confrontations. None of them had prepared him for this, facing a unit that moved as one, whose loyalty and discipline were absolute. He realized that his understanding of authority and respect had been tested in the most extreme way possible. Every instinct in his body screamed to retreat, to apologize, to find a way to diffuse the tension before it escalated further. The civilians, once curious observers, now watched in silent awe. Some clutched their belongings tightly, unsure of how the situation would unfold. Children, sensing the seriousness in the air, held their parents' hands a little tighter. Photographers, hesitant to move, continued to document the scene, capturing the precise moment when discipline and impulsiveness collided in the heart of the palace. As the tension thickened, Rajan understood one fundamental truth. The palace and its protectors operated on a code far stricter than any law he had enforced on the streets. Discipline, respect, and precision were not just values, they were survival mechanisms. One wrong move could escalate into chaos, yet Victor's calm presence reminded everyone that order could be restored without violence if approached correctly. In that moment, Rajan felt a mixture of fear, regret, and awe. He had inadvertently stepped into a world governed by rules far more rigid than any he had known. The slap, a fleeting act of anger, had triggered a chain reaction that demonstrated the sheer power of training, loyalty, and unwavering discipline. He realized that the palace was more than a building. It was a living testament to control, authority, and the fine balance between order and chaos. As Rajan lowered his gaze and waited for the next move, he could only hope that one moment of rashness would not define his career or his reputation. Around him, the courtyard remained tense, every observer acutely aware of the thin line between impulsive action and disciplined authority. It was a lesson Rajan would never forget, a moment that would shape his understanding of respect, protocol, and the true weight of responsibility. The morning sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows across the marble floor, illuminating the scene with a soft golden glow. Yet beneath the beauty of the courtyard and the ceremonial splendor, a storm of tension and anticipation lingered, waiting to see how a single slap could ripple through the disciplined world of the royal palace. The courtyard remained frozen in a tense silence, the echo of the slap still lingering in the air like an invisible crack. Officer Rajan's heart pounded as he stood surrounded by the royal platoon. Every soldier's eyes were locked on him, unwavering and alert, ready to respond at a moment's notice. Their movements were deliberate, precise, and synchronized, a perfect demonstration of training and discipline. It was as if the entire courtyard had become a stage, with Rajan caught in the center, performing an improvisation he did not understand. Captain Victor remained the calm center of this storm. His eyes scanned Rajan carefully, analyzing every micro-movement. Though his face showed no emotion, there was a sharpness in his gaze that left no room for misinterpretation. This was not a man who tolerated disrespect, and even less a man who ignored breaches of protocol in his presence. Every soldier in the platoon had learned from Victor that discipline was not only expected, it was demanded without exception. Rajan tried to steady his shaking hands. He raised them slightly, attempting a gesture of surrender, a signal that he meant no harm. "Captain Victor," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I didn't mean to—" His words faltered as he noticed the movement of the soldiers around him. They were not advancing aggressively, but their formation tightened, creating an unbroken ring around him. Every step they took was measured, each glance calculated. The precision of their response made it clear. Any misstep, any attempt to escape would immediately be noticed. Rajan felt a cold sweat form on his forehead. This was far beyond a simple confrontation. This was an overwhelming display of discipline and readiness, and he was at its center. The civilians around the courtyard, who had been observing with curiosity just moments ago, now stepped back instinctively. Their murmurs had stopped entirely, replaced by a collective breath-holding, as if the atmosphere itself had thickened. Children clutched their parents' hands, sensing the seriousness of the moment. Photographers froze in mid-motion, cameras still raised, capturing the drama unfolding before them. Every detail, the tight formation, the synchronized posture, the stillness of Victor's face, was a lesson in control and authority. Rajan's mind raced, trying to understand the best course of action. He knew that trying to explain himself would not suffice. Victor's platoon would not act on words alone. They were trained to respond to actions, not excuses. Rajan could feel the weight of his mistake pressing down on him, heavier than the polished marble beneath his feet. His career, reputation, and dignity were all in that moment, hanging precariously in the balance. Suddenly, Victor's voice broke the silence. It was calm, measured, and surprisingly deep, but carried a weight that made every word feel important. "Officer Rajan, your actions have consequences," he said. "Here in this courtyard, every movement is watched, every gesture noted. Discipline is not a suggestion, it is a requirement." The tone of his voice was not angry, yet it was firm enough to silence any protest. The soldiers surrounding Rajan shifted slightly, a subtle adjustment that indicated readiness, yet not aggression. It was a carefully controlled display of strength, meant to remind Rajan of the consequences without resorting to violence. Rajan swallowed hard, his mouth dry. He realized that the slap, a momentary lapse in judgment, had escalated into a situation far beyond his control. He had always prided himself on being quick-thinking and composed under pressure, but this was different. This was not a street confrontation or a routine law enforcement task. This was the heart of the royal palace, a place where every gesture, every action was governed by strict rules and expectations. As he stood there, his eyes scanning the platoon, Rajan noticed the small details that made their discipline so impressive. Each soldier's uniform was flawless, not a wrinkle in sight. Their boots were polished to a reflective shine, and their weapons, though not raised aggressively, were held with precise readiness. The distance between each soldier was exact, calculated to create maximum coverage without leaving gaps. It was as if they were a single living organism, each part moving in perfect harmony with the others. For Rajan, it was both terrifying and mesmerizing. He had trained for high-pressure situations before, but never had he witnessed such coordinated precision. The soldiers' calm efficiency contrasted sharply with the chaos of his own thoughts, making him feel small, vulnerable, and acutely aware of his impulsive mistake. Every instinct in his body screamed to retreat, to apologize, to find some way to diffuse the tension. Yet the formation around him left no room for movement. He was trapped, not physically, but by the sheer weight of disciplined presence surrounding him. Victor stepped forward, the soft click of his boots echoing across the courtyard. His eyes never left Rajan's face, and yet there was a strange mix of firmness and composure in his expression. "You may not understand it now, officer," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the courtyard, "but what you have done disrupts order. This is not merely about a slap. It is about respect, about discipline, about the structure that keeps this palace secure and functional. One wrong move can set off a chain of events far greater than you realize." The words sank into Rajan's mind. He had never thought of protocol and discipline in such absolute terms. On the streets there were rules, of course, but they were flexible, open to interpretation, influenced by circumstance. Here, rules were absolute. They were the backbone of every action, every response, every decision made by the royal guards. Any deviation was noticeable, any breach significant. The crowd around them continued to watch, rapt and silent. Some parents whispered softly to their children, explaining in hushed tones that the palace was a place of strict rules and careful control. The civilians' presence, while passive, added another layer of pressure. Rajan could feel their eyes on him, and it made every heartbeat louder, every breath sharper. This was not just a professional misstep. It was a public spectacle, a test of character under scrutiny. Rajan tried to speak again, his voice steadier this time. "Captain Victor, I truly didn't mean to disrespect you. It was an accident. I was adjusting the barrier and—" Victor raised a hand slightly, stopping him. "Words will not undo what has occurred," he said calmly. "Actions have consequences. Discipline is measured in more than apologies. It is measured in awareness, respect, and the ability to act without causing disruption." The surrounding soldiers subtly shifted, reinforcing the perimeter. Their movements were silent yet deliberate, a reminder that they were always prepared, always vigilant. Rajan noticed small gestures, a slight tightening of a grip on a rifle, a subtle adjustment of stance, each a silent message that they were ready to act if needed. Yet there was no hostility. This was a test of understanding, a demonstration of control, not a threat of violence. For the first time, Rajan understood the philosophy behind Victor's leadership. Discipline was not about fear. It was about consistency, reliability, and trust. The soldiers' coordinated actions were not meant to intimidate, but to ensure that order was maintained, that the palace remained a place of safety and structure. He realized that his impulsive slap had violated this system, threatening the very balance that the platoon worked to uphold every day. Time seemed to stretch. Every second that passed felt significant, as if the courtyard itself was holding its breath. Rajan could feel his pulse in his temples, hear the soft rustle of uniforms, the distant shuffle of the palace staff, the faint click of polished boots against marble. It was a moment suspended between potential chaos and the calm enforcement of authority. Finally, Victor spoke again, his tone unchanged but carrying weight that anchored Rajan's thoughts. "You must learn from this, officer. Discipline is not optional and respect is not negotiable. You are fortunate that this incident occurred under observation rather than during a moment of true crisis. Consider this a lesson, not only in conduct but in awareness. Learn it well." Rajan nodded quickly, swallowing the lump in his throat. He could feel the tension easing slightly, though the weight of the lesson remained firmly on his shoulders. The soldiers slowly relaxed their formation, though their eyes never left him entirely. The demonstration of readiness, precision, and discipline had been delivered clearly. Rajan had witnessed firsthand the power of coordination and controlled response, a force far greater than any he had encountered in the streets. As the palace staff returned to their duties, the civilians slowly began to move again, some still whispering in astonishment at what they had witnessed. Photographers lowered their cameras, capturing the final moments of a scene that would be remembered for years. The sunlight reflected off the marble floors once more, casting long, golden shadows across the courtyard, highlighting the contrast between impulsive action and disciplined presence. Rajan remained where he was, hands still slightly raised, breathing deeply, trying to process the experience. It was more than a lesson in etiquette or respect. It was a glimpse into a world where discipline, precision, and awareness governed every action. The royal platoon had shown him what true control looked like, and he knew that he would carry this understanding with him for the rest of his career. The morning continued, and the ceremony proceeded as planned, but for Rajan, the moment would never fade. The slap, the immediate response, the silent coordination of the soldiers, and Victor's unwavering calm had created a memory etched in sharp relief. It was a reminder that even a single moment of impulsive behavior could ripple through an entire system, changing perceptions, altering dynamics, and teaching lessons far beyond what words could convey. And as the crowd settled back into the rhythm of the ceremony, Rajan quietly vowed to remember the weight of discipline, the importance of respect, and the strength that comes from calm, coordinated action. He had stepped into the courtyard as an officer on duty, but he left with a deeper understanding of authority, responsibility, and the power of controlled presence. The tension in the courtyard had not dissipated. It had only grown heavier. Officer Rajan stood frozen, surrounded by the royal platoon, every muscle in his body alert, every instinct screaming caution. Captain Victor remained calm in the center of it all, a pillar of control and authority. His gaze never wavered, and his posture was perfect, radiating confidence and discipline. Rajan could feel the weight of those eyes, as if Victor could see straight into his thoughts, exposing every hesitation, every uncertainty. The courtyard was silent now, save for the subtle sounds of the palace waking around them, the shuffle of staff returning to their duties, the soft whisper of flags swaying in the wind, and the distant murmur of the gathered crowd, who were still trying to process the audacity of what had just happened. Rajan felt small in comparison to the uniformed men around him. Each soldier seemed to embody a controlled energy, a force held tightly in check, ready to be released only under precise command. Rajan tried to speak again, his voice breaking slightly. "Captain Victor, please, I didn't mean to disrespect you. It was an accident, Victor raised his hand once more, stopping him before he could finish. "Words cannot undo what has occurred, Officer Rajan," he said evenly. His voice was calm, but each syllable carried weight, a reminder that the situation was serious. "Actions have consequences. Respect is earned through awareness and discipline. Your actions have challenged that order." Rajan swallowed hard, feeling the full weight of Victor's words. He had always believed in being brave, in standing his ground when necessary. But standing here in the courtyard, facing a unit trained to act as one, he felt his courage faltering. He realized that bravery alone could not navigate this situation. What he needed was humility, awareness, and patience, qualities he had never fully appreciated until this moment. The platoon began to shift subtly, not aggressively, but in a coordinated, deliberate manner. They formed a tighter circle around Rajan, their movements silent but precise, each soldier aware of their position relative to the others. Rajan noticed the minute adjustments, a slight lean forward, a subtle change in hand placement, the way their feet were positioned for balance and speed. It was a display of professional excellence that left him both impressed and intimidated. Captain Victor took a step closer. His boots clicked softly against the polished marble, each sound echoing like a measured drumbeat. Rajan could feel the energy in the courtyard shift, a subtle yet powerful presence that seemed to compress the air around him. Victor's eyes studied Rajan intently, reading his body language, noting the small signs of nervousness, the way his fingers twitched, the slight tension in his shoulders. Victor's calm observation contrasted sharply with the chaos of Rajan's thoughts, making him painfully aware of his own lack of control. "You must understand," Victor said, his voice low but clear, "that in this place one wrong action can have consequences far beyond what you imagine. Every soldier, every officer, every staff member relies on predictability, awareness, and respect. Your actions disrupted that balance, and it is my responsibility to restore it." The words sank deep into Rajan's mind. He realized that this was not simply about the slap. It was about the principle of order, the system that allowed the palace to function without chaos. On the streets, rules could be flexible. Here they were absolute. He had not just made a mistake. He had broken a fundamental code, and now he was facing the full consequence of that breach. The platoon's formation tightened slightly, a subtle shift that Rajan recognized as a readiness to act if necessary. Yet, there was no aggression in their stance. They were not here to punish him physically. They were here to demonstrate control, to make clear that discipline and precision were far more powerful than any impulsive act. Every soldier's focus was on Victor, yet their peripheral awareness encompassed Rajan, ready to respond instantly to any sudden movement. Rajan's mind raced as he tried to find a way to de-escalate the situation. He had always been trained to act decisively, to take control in moments of tension. But here, decisiveness required restraint, not action. Any rash movement could escalate the situation beyond repair. He could feel the weight of the crowd's gaze, the silent expectation that the situation would be resolved without further incident. It was a delicate balance, and he understood for the first time how fragile order could be. Victor's voice broke through his thoughts again. "You must learn to control your impulses, officer. Strength is measured not by force, but by the ability to act with clarity and restraint. One moment of anger can undo years of training, preparation, and trust." Rajan nodded slowly, taking in every word. The truth of it resonated deeply. He had prided himself on being strong, capable, and quick-thinking, but in the face of this disciplined force, he realized that true strength was something entirely different. It was patience, composure, and the ability to understand the consequences of every action. The crowd, which had been watching silently, began to shift slightly. Some whispered to each other, sharing their amazement at the display of discipline. The children clung to their parents, wide-eyed, sensing the seriousness of the moment without fully understanding it. Photographers captured every subtle movement, the slight adjustment of a soldier's stance, the calm yet authoritative steps of Captain Victor, the tense posture of Officer Rajan. Each image would tell a story of order, control, and the delicate balance between authority and impulse. Rajan felt his own tension begin to ease slightly, though the weight of responsibility remained heavy. He raised his hands slightly higher, a universal gesture of submission and acknowledgement. "Captain Victor, I understand. I will follow your instructions and learn from this," he said, his voice firmer now, though still tinged with nervousness. Victor's eyes softened slightly, a fleeting moment that reminded Rajan that discipline was not cruelty. "Good," Victor replied. "Acknowledgement is the first step. Understanding and control will follow. Remember, officer, this is not about punishment. It is about learning the principles that allow this palace to operate safely and effectively." The soldiers around Victor slowly began to relax, though their attention never wavered. Rajan could feel the change in the air, a shift from immediate tension to controlled awareness. The lesson had been made clear. Discipline and respect were more powerful than any force, more commanding than any impulsive act. The slap, a moment of rash action, had become a teaching moment, one that would remain with Rajan for the rest of his life. Rajan took a deep breath, steadying himself. He realized that he had not only survived a tense encounter, but had learned a profound lesson about authority, control, and respect. His respect for Captain Victor and the royal platoon deepened. These men and women were not simply soldiers. They were guardians of order, embodiments of discipline, and examples of how controlled strength could command attention without aggression. As the crowd slowly returned to their activities, the ceremony in the courtyard resumed. The flags continued to flutter, the polished marble shone in the sunlight, and the soldiers returned to their drills with quiet precision. Yet for Rajan, the memory of the confrontation remained vivid. Every detail, the echo of the slap, the calm authority of Victor, the coordinated movements of the platoon, was etched into his mind. He reflected on the lessons of the morning. On the streets, he had faced challenges, confrontations, and danger, but nothing had prepared him for the power of calm, disciplined authority. The royal platoon had demonstrated that strength was not measured by reaction, but by control. Impulse could create chaos, but patience and awareness maintained order. Every gesture, every step, every moment of attention contributed to the safety and stability of the palace. Rajan knew that this experience would shape his approach to his duties forever. He had learned that being an officer was not only about enforcing rules, but also about understanding the broader system of order and respect. In the presence of disciplined authority, his own impulses and pride were meaningless unless guided by awareness and control. As he stood there absorbing the weight of the lesson, Victor gave a final, calm command. "Return to your post, officer. Continue your duties with awareness. Let this be a reminder that discipline is the foundation of safety, respect, and trust." Rajan bowed his head slightly, acknowledging the command. He moved carefully to his designated position, every step deliberate, every gesture controlled. The platoon watched him, maintaining their positions, ensuring that order remained intact. He felt a deep sense of humility and gratitude. He had faced a situation that could have escalated into chaos, yet it had been resolved through discipline, patience, and the quiet power of authority. The crowd continued to observe, some whispering in amazement, others discussing the lessons they had witnessed. The children, still holding their parents' hands, had learned a subtle lesson in respect and awareness, even without fully understanding the complexities of the situation. The palace itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as order was restored, and the ceremonial activities resumed with a renewed sense of calm and dignity. For Rajan, the morning had become a defining moment. He had experienced firsthand the power of discipline, the importance of respect, and the necessity of controlled action. The slap, impulsive and reckless, had been transformed into a profound lesson in authority, coordination, and the balance between action and restraint. He knew that the memory of this day would guide him, shaping his decisions, his approach to authority, and his understanding of what it truly meant to serve with integrity. And so, as the ceremony continued, and the courtyard returned to its rhythmic precision, Rajan remained vigilant, aware, and deeply changed. He had witnessed the pinnacle of discipline, felt the weight of authority, and learned that true strength lay not in force, but in calm, deliberate action guided by respect, awareness, and unwavering control. The morning sun had climbed higher over the palace, casting a warm, golden glow across the courtyard. The marble floors shimmered under the light, reflecting the flags that fluttered softly in the breeze. Yet, despite the beauty and calm of the surroundings, the tension from earlier lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. Officer Rajan, now standing quietly at his designated post, could still feel the weight of the royal platoon's presence behind him. Every detail of the morning replayed in his mind. The slap, the immediate response of the guards, Captain Victor's calm authority, and the coordinated movements of the soldiers. It was a moment that had changed him profoundly. Even as he tried to focus on his duties, Rajan's thoughts kept drifting back to the lessons he had learned. He realized that the incident had been more than a personal confrontation. It had been a test of awareness, patience, and respect. The courtyard, now filled with the soft murmur of the crowd, and the rhythmic clicking of boots from the remaining ceremonial soldiers, seemed almost ordinary. Yet beneath that ordinary appearance was a hidden order, a strict system of discipline that ensured the palace ran smoothly and safely every day. Rajan glanced at Captain Victor, who was observing the courtyard from a few steps away, standing tall and composed. Victor's presence was calming yet commanding, a constant reminder of the principles that governed the royal platoon. Even after the confrontation, Victor remained approachable but unwavering, showing that authority could be exercised without anger or aggression. Rajan felt a deep sense of respect for the captain, understanding for the first time the burden of leadership and the patience required to maintain order in such a high-stakes environment. The platoon slowly began to disperse, returning to their ceremonial duties, but their movements remained precise and disciplined. Each soldier executed their tasks with exact timing and careful attention to detail. Rajan watched them in awe, noting the subtle gestures, the exact placement of weapons, and the synchronized steps. The display was mesmerizing, a clear demonstration that discipline and training were more powerful than any force or threat. He realized that the guards, professionalism had not only prevented chaos, but had also taught him a lesson in humility and awareness. As the courtyard gradually returned to its usual rhythm, Rajan began interacting with the crowd once more, guiding visitors and ensuring that no one crossed the barriers. However, his approach had changed. He moved with calm, deliberate gestures, aware of every action and its potential consequences. The impulsive energy that had led to the slap earlier was replaced by measured patience. He noticed small details he had overlooked before: the way the crowd reacted to the guards, the spacing between visitors, and the subtle signs of tension in individuals who were nervous or unsure. Every observation reminded him of the lesson he had just learned. Awareness was the foundation of control. The civilians, many of whom had witnessed the confrontation, continued to talk in hushed tones. Some expressed astonishment at the speed and coordination of the royal platoon, while others whispered about Captain Victor's calm authority. Children remained close to their parents, wide-eyed, absorbing the seriousness of what they had seen without fully understanding the complexities of discipline and respect. Photographers, still capturing images for their records, moved carefully, ensuring they did not disrupt the restored order. The incident had left an impression on everyone present, a vivid reminder that the palace was a place where structure, awareness, and respect governed every action. Rajan reflected on his own behavior and how it contrasted with the discipline he had witnessed. On the streets, he had often relied on speed, decisiveness, and quick thinking to resolve situations. But here, in the heart of the palace, he had learned that true effectiveness came from control, patience, and understanding the broader system. The royal guards did not react with anger or aggression. They responded with precision and calm, ensuring that order was maintained without escalating the situation unnecessarily. It was a lesson in the power of restraint and the value of experience. Later, as the ceremony continued, Rajan found a quiet moment to speak with Victor privately. "Captain, I want to apologize again for my actions," he said sincerely. "I realize now how reckless I was, and I understand the importance of discipline and respect." Victor nodded, his expression calm but thoughtful. "Officer Rajan," he replied, "acknowledgement is the first step toward understanding. It is not enough to feel regret. You must learn to act with awareness in every situation. Discipline is not a punishment. It is a tool that ensures safety, trust, and order. Remember this lesson well, and it will serve you throughout your career." Rajan absorbed the words, feeling a mixture of humility and gratitude. He understood that this encounter had been more than a disciplinary lesson. It had been an opportunity to witness true professionalism and the principles that allowed the palace to function flawlessly. Victor's leadership was a model of calm authority, demonstrating that strength was measured not by force but by control, awareness, and consistency. The rest of the day unfolded smoothly. Rajan continued his duties with heightened focus, ensuring that the crowd remained orderly and that no further incidents occurred. Every interaction he had with civilians and colleagues reflected the lessons he had learned. He spoke calmly, acted deliberately, and paid attention to even the smallest details. The change in his approach was noticeable not only to himself, but to those around him. His colleagues began to rely on his guidance more, observing the care and awareness with which he conducted himself. Meanwhile, the royal platoon continued their ceremonial drills with impeccable precision. Victor observed them, occasionally offering small corrections, always maintaining a calm but firm demeanor. The soldiers executed each movement flawlessly, a testament to the training and discipline that had been instilled in them. Rajan watched in silent admiration, recognizing the effort, patience, and dedication required to achieve such a high level of coordination. By midday, the courtyard had returned to a sense of normalcy. Visitors moved freely within the designated areas, staff attended to their duties, and the ceremonial activities proceeded without interruption. Yet the memory of the confrontation lingered, not as a moment of conflict, but as a profound lesson in authority, discipline, and respect. Rajan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that his role as an officer was not only to enforce rules, but also to observe, learn, and adapt. The experience had taught him the value of patience, the importance of awareness, and the strength that comes from controlled action. As the day drew to a close, Rajan reflected on the events with a sense of gratitude. He had entered the courtyard as a police officer, confident in his abilities but unaware of the full scope of discipline required within the palace. He had acted impulsively, making a mistake that could have had serious consequences. Yet, through the calm authority of Captain Victor and the precise coordination of the royal platoon, he had learned a lesson that would remain with him forever. He realized that authority was not about domination or fear. It was about trust, consistency, and the ability to maintain order through calm, deliberate action. Discipline was not punishment. It was a foundation that allowed individuals and groups to function safely and effectively. Respect was not demanded through fear. It was earned through awareness, composure, and integrity. These principles, once understood, could guide anyone through the most challenging situations. Rajan also reflected on the impact of the incident on the civilians who had witnessed it. Many of them had learned subtle lessons in discipline, awareness, and respect, even without fully understanding the complexities of the situation. Children had observed the power of calm authority, the importance of following rules, and the value of controlled action. Adults had seen firsthand the consequences of impulsive behavior and the strength of coordinated response. The incident, though brief, had left a lasting impression on everyone present. By the end of the day, the courtyard was quiet, the ceremonial flags lowered gently in the evening breeze. The sun began to set, casting long, soft shadows across the polished marble floors. Officer Rajan stood near the edge of the courtyard, watching the soldiers return to their barracks, each movement precise and disciplined. He felt a sense of peace and understanding, knowing that he had witnessed and experienced a powerful demonstration of professionalism, authority, and control. As he prepared to leave for the day, Rajan approached Captain Victor one last time. "Thank you, Captain," he said sincerely. "I have learned more today than I could have imagined. I will carry this lesson with me always." Victor nodded, a small, approving smile crossing his face. "Remember, officer," he said, "discipline and respect are not only for the palace. They are principles that will guide you in every part of your life. Let this experience shape your actions, and you will find strength in ways you never expected." Rajan left the courtyard that evening, walking with a renewed sense of purpose and awareness. The events of the morning, though intense and challenging, had transformed him. He understood now that authority and discipline were not abstract concepts. They were living principles, demonstrated through action, observation, and awareness. He knew that his career, his relationships, and his ability to handle challenges would be forever influenced by what he had learned in those intense moments within the palace courtyard. Even as the palace settled into the quiet of evening, the lessons remained vivid. Rajan reflected on the incident as a turning point, a moment that had tested his impulses, his understanding of respect, and his ability to respond under pressure. He felt a deep sense of humility and gratitude for the opportunity to witness such a high level of discipline and professionalism. The experience had taught him that true strength lay not in reaction but in control, not in force but in awareness, and not in impulsive action but in thoughtful, deliberate response. As he walked away from the palace gates, the last rays of sunlight glinting off the marble floors behind him, Rajan knew that the events of the day would shape his future in ways he could not yet fully understand. The lessons of discipline, respect, and awareness were etched into his mind, ready to guide him through any challenge, any confrontation, and any moment of uncertainty that might come his way. And so the courtyard returned to its usual calm, the flags fluttering gently in the breeze, the soldiers returning to their routines, and the palace standing as a symbol of order, discipline, and respect. For Officer Rajan, however, the day had been transformative. He had faced a moment of impulsive error, witnessed the power of coordinated authority, and emerged with a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to act with awareness, integrity, and respect.